Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Sound Up, your direct connection to everything going on in the world of music. I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
Today is our Sound Up, Sound Off episode. Now, sure, we've got the latest music news and interviews, but our weekly Sound Off episode is the place for you to make your voice heard.
You, the audience, are a part of the conversation live as we're joined by our Sound Up Pod Squad panelists. Find out how you can join a live taping at sounduppod.com.
All right, let's get to it. It's time to sound up and sound off.
This is Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters.
Welcome to Sound Up. I'm Mark Goodman.
And I am Alan Light.
On today's podcast, we continue our discussion on the decade that rules them all, the 80s, and to help us discuss why the 80s are more popular than ever is solo artist, original Skid Row vocalist, and 80s cruise alum, Sebastian Bach.
Also weighing in on this topic is our Sound Up Pod Squad panel live right here in our virtual studio with us.
Plus, we have some Sound Up show comments, including this one from Sound Up Pod Squad member Craig.
Hello, Mark, Alan, Roger. Craig Weber from Pittsburgh. So there I was Saturday night, watching Jason Isbell with about 2,800 people at the Benedum Theater in Pittsburgh. Across town, Zach Bryan was playing to about 15,000 people at PPG Arena. I remember in the waning days of Debatable, Zach Bryan was just becoming a thing. And I wondered, how the hell did this happen? How did I miss this? How is he playing stadiums, arenas? Jason still playing theaters. This isn't a commentary about one artist surpassing another. It's kind of a commentary on how the hell all this happened without me knowing about it. And the simple answer is, I used to know about all this stuff because I could talk to you guys every day. You guys would keep me abreast of new music and the goings on. And I'm sure, for Debatable still around the past couple of years, you would have tracked the trajectory of artists like Zach Bryan and Noah Kahan, who similarly was on a bill the last time I saw Jason 2 years ago. The song Stick Season struck me and resonated with me, and I thought he was probably somebody who we'd hear more of. And here we are a few years later, and we're certainly hearing more of him. He's playing festivals, headlining stadiums, arenas, etc. My point on all this is I missed it. I missed the news. I missed what was going on, the new music, everything you guys used to bring me. You guys exposed me to music that wasn't necessarily in my lane. It made me branch out. You guys made me branch out with regard to Jason Isbell, who had been on my radar along with the Drive-By Truckers. But the Volumaniac community that you guys created and fostered, I became a huge fan. I've seen them 4 times now. I've seen the Truckers 2 times since Debatable here. And I love it. I thank you guys for that. I thank you guys for everything you always did. And I thank you for what you're doing now. I'm so glad to have you back. And I'll count on you guys to keep me abreast of everything that's going. Next time that Zach Bryan is playing to 15,000 seats and I wonder how the hell that happened, I'll know about it. Anyway, love you guys. Glad to have you back. Your friend, Craig in Pittsburgh.
Wow, Craig, that's pretty awesome. I'm blushing. We appreciate that. We're glad to be back as well. And God, I wish this was actually a phone call because I want to know how the hell he got tickets. I can't. I'm trying.
Well, no, he got Isbell tickets. I don't know that he got Zach Bryan tickets.
I just figured he was going to be in there too, yeah.
We should probably mention that we have been talking about new music picks on our first show of the week, and we have started putting together a playlist on Spotify so that you can hear the stuff that we're talking about, the Sound Up Pod soundtrack, to check out the songs that we're talking about here on the show.
And you have to use that title, Sound Up Pod soundtrack.
They're good. They'll find it.
Yeah, probably better at it than me.
I would bet.
We are going to hear from some other fans and some other people who have some great comments on what's going on. But we wanted to jump into some of the big news stories that have happened just since we were last on just a minute ago, it seems.
I'm very interested to hear people's comments and follow up to beginning our conversation about the 80s and the endless nostalgia and love for the 80s. I want to hear what people have to say about that. But you may have seen that Beyonce has confirmed the new album and a title and a release date. Act 2, Cowboy Carter, will be coming out March 29th, confirming a couple of things, I guess, which is we've all been saying from the first couple of songs that we got that it's going to be a country project. She still hasn't actually said that, but the title certainly turns over the cards, tells us where this is going. Also very interesting is this week, Dolly Parton has said that she believes that Beyonce has covered one of her greatest hits for this album. She said, I think she's recorded Jolene, and I think it's probably going to be on this country album, which I am very excited about. Dolly said, I love her. She's a beautiful girl and a great singer. We've kind of sent messages back and forth through the years. She and her mother were like fans, and I was always touched that they were fans. I always thought that she was great. How you feeling about a Beyonce Jolene cover?
I'm curious what our virtual audience is going to have to say about it. Look, that's such an amazing song. And I mean, Beyonce is an amazing singer. I have faith in her being able to do justice to that song. I mean, it's been covered by so many people. So she's got a high bar, not to mention Dolly's own version.
I don't know. Do you want to hear her do it straight? Do you want to hear her do mix it up?
You know, I feel like with that song, I think she's got to just do it straight, man. It's a heartfelt song. It's really personal. And I think she's got to do it straight. That's my take. What do you think?
Be interesting to see. But we've only got a couple of weeks. March 29, week
right
after next, we'll get this album.
I'm guessing it's done already, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
probably,
though, remember,
right?
Those get worked till the last minute. I mean, remember the last album on Renaissance, she had to go in after it was released and take that Khalees. Then Khalees had that issue about using an unapproved sample. And even after it was released, they went in and changed it. So, things are never done.
Right.
Things are never really done.
Right.
One other thing, not a new release, but a return. Neil Young, you may recall, pulled his music off of Spotify a while back in protest of Spotify running Joe Rogan's podcast and airing what Neil described as anti-vax disinformation.
It certainly prompted several other artists to do the same.
Right, and then Joni Mitchell and then the other CSN guys all pulled their music in solidarity with Neil and the point he was making. Neil has announced that now that Joe Rogan is no longer an exclusive to Spotify and the other streamers are running his podcast as well, there's no point in him continuing to boycott Spotify, so he's going to put his music back up on Spotify. He is not, however, doing this enthusiastically.
Clearly, the statement reveals that. I mean, the one thing, the telling moment in it is, my decision comes as music services Apple and Amazon have started serving the same disinformation podcast features I had opposed at Spotify. Yeah. So I cannot just leave Apple and Amazon like I did Spotify. I get it.
And with his lifelong crusade regarding audio quality, the headline on Neil's statement on his Neil Young Archive site, "My return to low-res Spotify."
Right.
Statement begins, Spotify, the #1 streamer of low-res music in the world. Spotify, where you get less quality than we made, will now be home of my music again.
Yay.
Yay. I hope all you millions of Spotify users enjoy my song. They will now all be there for you, except for the full sound we created.
Is he sort of thinking anachronistically when it comes to that particular thing, considering most people are listening on earbuds?
Yeah. He says, Quobuz and Tidal, where my music is presented, are all high-res as well. I return to Spotify in sincere hopes that Spotify sound quality will improve. Hopefully Spotify will turn to high-res as the answer and serve all the music to everyone. Spotify, you can do it! ! Start with a limited high-res tier and build from there. So he's complaining, but he's at least offering them.
I guess, look, Spotify that's the one to beat. That is the giant music streamer. But I thought that they had a high-res tier. I thought I was on it, and then I realized, no, there is no high-res tier. But I don't have enough information. Amazon, and I subscribed, Amazon does have a high-res tier. And I did an A/B comparison from my vinyl to that. It was damn close. It still sounded like streaming, but it was better, Neil.
So
something to think about.
It will be interesting to see if the others, if his friends and cohorts follow suit and also come back up to the service.
Indeed.
So before we get into land of the 80s, we had a couple of sad news.
Yeah, we got to cover a couple of more passings. We got the news just the other night. Carl Wallinger, founding member of the Waterboys and the creative force behind World Party, has passed. Kind of shocking. The message came from his publicist. He was 66. He passed over the weekend. He has a pretty storied career. Maybe what you know most is the stuff that he did on his own or with the Waterboys, but man, a music director for the Rocky Horror Show in London's West End. He's worked on a number of other projects. I have to mention Mike Scott's shout out to him. Mike Scott is his partner in Waterboys, one of the finest musicians I've ever known, he said on his Monday post. Travel on well, my old friend.
Well, the fact that he was there with the Waterboys for Hole of the Moon and for really sort of their most beloved stuff. And then World Party had, the Goodbye Jumbo album and Way Down Now. And, there was a moment for that band. Critics loved them. Like that was a big press band, like right when I was sort of starting at Rolling Stone. So I remember that moment for them. There's a body of work that's there from this guy.
Yeah. And there was one of the quotes that I saw was talking about, why do we have to wait until someone passes before we realize how much that artist meant to us?
See in the chat here, Sean says, I was this week old when I found out Karl was in the Waterboys. I thought it was all Mike Scott. Later years, it was all Mike Scott, but that earlier stuff that everybody, still loves so much, Karl was definitely a big piece of those recordings. And then I think like a couple of hours after we got that news, it was the same day the news broke that Eric Carmen, former lead vocalist of the Raspberries and singer of All By Myself, passed away at the age of 74. Post on his website said, it is with tremendous sadness that we share the heartbreaking news of the passing of Eric Carmen. Our sweet, loving, and talented Eric passed away in his sleep over the weekend. It brought him great joy to know that for decades his music touched so many and will be his lasting legacy. No cause of death was given.
He's another classic example of, wow, let's look at what he has done aside from the Raspberries, not only his solo career, but all of the things that he contributed to others. I mean, Dirty Dancing, obviously, may be the best thing he's known for, but co-writing a huge song and an unlikely duo, Almost Paradise, with Mike Reno and Ann Wilson, killer song that they nailed. And, he was the one who created that. Just an incredible songwriter, an incredible singer as well.
Leaving aside All By Myself as his hit and then as Celine's hit, which is how a whole other generation came to that song.
Yeah.
Again, it stacks up as a lot of stuff. Roger put up here a tweet from our friend David Wild, journalist, TV writer, Grammy writer. We've had him on the show. I fell in love with power pop as a kid because of the Raspberries. I got to know Eric in the 80s, write liner notes for his music, and absolutely nothing, not time, not trends, not politics, could ever stop me from being his fan forever.
Yeah. There was, what an incredible outpouring online for Eric Carmen. A lot of pop artists. Rick Springfield was so crazy, was really sad about it and went on about it. He actually, when he was still in Australia, in a band in Australia, went on tour with the Raspberries, and just that guy was his idol, not only in the band, but as a songwriter as well. And he was really beautiful and eloquent with his tribute to him as well. All right. So yeah, we have to take a quick break after that sad news, but we've got quite a bit more. We want to talk with you. We were talking 80s on our last show, and with our virtual audience, we want to get in on some conversation with you. Before we take a break, though, we wanted to give you this email. This is from John, where is John now?
Formerly John in New Orleans, now John out in the Middle East on an oil rig.
Oh, man. I don't know how you get us out there. Do they have internet on oil rigs? John says, just wanted to share my quick thoughts on the Liam Gallagher, John Squire release. Listening to the album holistically, it reminds me of the Brits discovering American blues and putting their spin on it a la Cream or John Mayall. Just spin the first few seconds of I'm a Wheel and you'll understand. Guitar work definitely steals the show, with Squire going from rocking to dreamy. The lyrical songwriting goes from magnificent to downright lazy. Ouch. Make it up as you go along. Nobody know any better than you. Thank you for your thoughts and prayers, and F you too. Or the whole concept of the I'm so bored track. Come on, LG. This is lazy. If you're so bored with your TV, go to the pub, drink a few, and have a row so I have something to read about in the sun. On the other hand, the two singles definitely are perfection. He says the tour kicks off tonight in Glasgow, and I'll be studying the set list. He apologizes to the Sunita for that, who was a fanatic for set lists. So many thanks, John, out there on the oil rig. Thank you for the email, and thank you for that review. We've got quite a bit more to go here on Sound Up, the Sound Off episode, and we're going to be hearing from you after this.
It's your turn to sound off, right here on Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light.
Welcome back to our Sound Up, Sound Off podcast. This is the one where you, our virtual audience, gets to chime in. On the last show, we were talking about the 80s, and we asked you why the 80s is as huge as it is, and is it, in fact, the best decade ever, like I've been saying for years.
You guys were fresh off the 80s cruise. We had Lori Majewski here. We got into it. I want to hear what people have to say about this. I'm not ashamed to say. I mean, if the answer is it's all nostalgia, the world was better, we love the halo and the feeling around it, it's fine, and I can't argue with that. But a lot of the music, I didn't like it then, I don't like it now. I mean, the stuff that's great, I love. But the stuff that's great, like you can't just say there's Prince, there's Michael, there's Bruce. Like, of course we love that. But a lot of the stuff that's what you're playing every day as the core of this is 80s music. I made fun of it then and said, can you imagine years from now when this is going to be what people go back and listen? Like, that was a running joke. And still a lot of it I don't care about.
You are in the minority, dude.
Well, that my experience, I look at this, what was exciting in the 80s, like there's a lot of hip hop that I love.
Yeah.
That's not what's on the 80s cruise.
That's not true.
Well,
we had Tone Loc on last year. We've had Morris Day.
Morris Day is not hip hop.
True. But we have R&B and we have artists that aren't just fluffy shirt synth bands.
Sure. But the stuff that make the most impact to me is a different list than a lot of this list. So I want to know, it's 40 years since 1984, the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
What is it that still draws people? Because I can't argue with it. I see what the 80s channel on Sirius listenership is like. I see what happens with the cruise. I see what happens with all this stuff. We have people who go. I do want to hear why.
We have a bunch of people who want to respond to this. One of the things, and Alan, I just wanted to ask you this before we go to our audience. Do you agree, or do you think, as I do, that for the most part, whatever the music of your adolescence is the best fucking music ever? The 80s, I was not an adolescent in the 80s.
Exactly.
He just acted like one in the 80s.
And in my adolescence, and I'm a snot, I admit that, but I was listening to a lot of stuff that wasn't the stuff that came out at that moment, or certainly the stuff that was big in that moment. So when I think of what I was listening to when I was 14, 15, some of that is Purple Rain, but a lot of that is listening to old Motown records. Okay,
so for those who did not become music journalists,
everybody here is pretty serious about their music.
To your point, Mark, I graduate high school in 1987. And I could tell you every song that came out that year, every show I went to. And I do think it kind of imprints on you in a way that you just take it with you because it is that soundtrack to that point in your life.
Okay, so that means there's a 5-year window of people who were 13 to 18 who have that imprint. That's what fascinates me, is that it stays as strong as it stays, because you would think, okay, that's there, like that's always there. And it moves up and it moves on. But this keeps going, keeps going, keeps going.
Well, before there were channels like the 80s channel on Sirius XM, there was classic rock channels. And why? Because people who grew up in the 60s and 70s demanded it. And it's the same sort of thing. Having said that, I wonder, and I want people to weigh in on this, can you imagine the 90s, people feeling this way about 90s music? I cannot.
They announced the lineup for the 90s cruise today.
I knew. So let's jump to Dina.
Dina, get in here.
Okay, so you're killing me, Alan, and I have so much respect for you, and I just don't know how we're going to go on.
You know I can't lie to you, Dina. You know that.
I know, and we'll always have Prince and a number of other things, so I think we'll probably make it, but it's just a little bit about me died when I heard you say that. But the fact is that I get it. The thing is that, and Roger, you and I are a year apart, because I graduated high school in 86. And there may be some of that, but the same way that I love funk and the same way that I love soul and I love R&B, I love that music from the 80s. I mean, Sparks is just my favorite band. Oingo Boingo is one of my favorite bands from the 80s. I mean, I saw them in their heyday, and that's what imprinted on me. Is those experiences. And I would think that it would be sort of a teenage imprint if I didn't continue to love them into my 50s, right? And go see them and have those experiences. Like when we were at Cruel World last year and Squeeze showed up in place of Adam Ant, I lost my mind. I mean, and so for me, that music hasn't changed. And I think that people like what they like. I mean, remember the backlash on disco. I don't see that going anywhere. People still love that. People still love that beat and that everything. And there's cruises for that, and there's cruises for this. So I think that there's something about it. That music doesn't age to me.
What about the idea that people feel it was so innocent and it was such a fun decade? Do you subscribe?
It was awful. The decade was horrible. There were awful things happening. People were dying in like by the thousands on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I know how most of the people on this screen vote. It didn't go well in the 80s. All right,
Yeah.
Mark, you and I are aligned. I mean, the 80s weren't great. I mean, it was a recovery time for some people. I mean, I can't reiterate the AIDS crisis and what that did.
Exactly.
So the music was something that just let, the same way I think the 60s, that the music let people get away from the war and get away from things that were making them sad. And the 80s music is still music that I go to be in a different place.
You know, being that we're so close in age, you know, and Mark and Alan, you guys brought this up before, that there were a lot of songs written about like the apocalypse in the 80s, but most of those songs are really upbeat.
It's about falling in love during a nuclear holocaust.
But it's like the music was so happy, you know, it was like this total opposite to what was going on. And also, and I've always thought this too, that innocence, I think, has something to do with, it is the last generation before the internet. It is the last generation where we all got connected in a very different but separate way. That, to me, I think also plays a part of it.
And I think the way we shared music was so different. I mean, I think I look at my nieces and nephews and the generations that came after us.
You made mixtapes.
Right. We had mixtapes. That's how you expressed feelings for people, and the order it was in, and the care it took, and you sat around listening to records together. I mean, I have a record of a friend that I went to high school with that I never gave back, and we talk periodically. I'm like, you don't want that back, do you? Because like that's the thing that I got. So you can't get me to give that up, and I think that there's something wonderful about it.
Thank you. I know Laurel,
weigh in for us.
Okay, Alan, I'm kind of on your side in that the good music of the 80s was really good. And then there's the, you know, all the stuff I had to sing when I was singing in a band. I'm wondering if part of the issue, and I'm not a numbers person, I wonder if there's some sort of demographic bubble that there are this many more people like Roger and Dean who hit that sweet spot of the 80s versus maybe there's this many from the 70s and this many. I mean, obviously it will as people pass away, but I don't know if it's maybe there are just that many more people.
That's one thing that's going to be interesting to watch, because the 90s is actually sort of the echo boomers, right? And that's when Britney and NSYNC and all that stuff exploded, partly because all the baby boomers kids were hitting that age.
Exactly.
And so that market exploded.
Yeah.
That's going to be an interesting one to track.
I went on Saturday night to see Living Color opening for Extreme. And that just screams 80s in all ways, shapes, and forms. First of all, they were both fabulous. I was astounded by all of them. And the crowd was a mix. I sort of looked around knowing that I would talk to you guys this week. It was such a mix of people my age, everybody in that age range, but then had brought their kids. And so we're opening up. So now, you know, there's a whole new influx of people who are going to be into 80s music.
Question for Mark, because you've watched this happen, and there's an interesting thing, you know, we've talked a lot about it. It's just weird now that kids grow up and there's sort of this understanding that they're going to listen to stuff that's 40 and 50 years old, which would have been insane.
Yeah.
You know, when we were growing up, like that would make no sense. But it feels like there's something that sort of happened within the industry where it used to be that acts got old and they went on an oldies circuit, right? If you do the math, when they hit 20 years out, even bands from the 60s, a lot of them were on this like old timers circuit. And now that all bleeds into, there's all these other outlets. There's stuff like the cruise, there's package tours, there's all these other ways for people to stay out there. I think with this assumption that you keep working, right? You keep doing stuff. There's new avenues. There's more avenues. I feel like the opportunities for older acts have really transformed even over the course of like, you know, from your radio days to now.
It does seem like there is more opportunity, but it's in the same way that if you think about an oldies radio station, just like that, you know, just an oldies station, what did that mean? You know, years ago, it was music from the 50s and 60s, you know, if you were listening in the 70s. But then when you were listening in the 70s, the 50s, not so much. It was more the 60s. And then towards the end of the 70s, it was the early, and the oldest stuff usually drops off.
Historically,
yes.
But that's not what we see with this.
I think there is something about the 80s. There's something that's not happening in the 90s. I don't think. We'll see. The cruise will be an interesting sort of bellwether to see what it means. Look, I grew up in the 60s, a magic time. Music was incredible. There was a ton of stuff going on. There was a lot of stuff to be upset about and sad about, but I look back on that time as magic. But it's not the same as the 80s. Even to me, I get it. The 60s and what happened was a different thing. There is something good-natured, I think is maybe the word, about the 80s. Like these people who come on this cruise and they're into all these different nights and they're celebrating, not like jerks, but they're celebrating and they're feeling great and feeling young.
Hearing you guys talk when you had Loriana talk about the costume party every night and the dress, which to me, sorry, Dina, is like a fucking living nightmare. I can't imagine that for 5 seconds doing that in my life. But looking at that 90s lineup today, I'm like, what are the 90s costumes going to be? There'll be grunge night. Then what will there be? Yeah. It's something else that's happening. You do crisscross. You wear stuff backwards. I don't know what you do. All right. We should keep moving. I know we'd said we were going to go to Sean.
Sean.
Dina touched on what I was going to say a little bit, but I think it really has to do with the democratization of music. If you think about it, the technology changed. You had synthesizers and sequencers and drum machines. And Alan, from a hip hop standpoint, all you really needed was 2 turntables and a microphone.
So they say.
So you didn't have to have bass, guitar, drum. You could be creative. And I think that really resonated with people, that it didn't have to be a 3-piece band or 4-piece. And the people that really liked that, kept going. And then to further that, you talked about it with Dina, Mark, this is the first mixtape I ever made. I still have it.
Aren't you supposed to give those away?
No.
But the ability to share music started with cassettes.
Yeah.
And the ability to expose other people to other bands, and people gravitate toward that because it meant something, because it's like, look, you don't have to, hide in your brother's bedrooms, smoking a bong and listen to Pink Floyd. You could put it on.
You could be listening to Squeeze and smoking a bong.
They created technology around it. Here's a Walkman. I can take it with me. Here's a cassette deck. I can put it in the car.
Mm-hmm. So Walkman, it was most underrated, most revolutionary piece of technology ever.
Yeah, it is true.
Putting music in the hands of people through cassette and through technology, there's a thing about that, and that all happened with the bands in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that happened in the 80s, look, MTV, I think, was the center of it all and inspired a lot of trends. And one of the things that happened on MTV was we began to play movie stuff. People in movies, producers and directors, were making music and editing the films to put on MTV because they know we'd play it 9 times a day.
Other way around. It's not that you were playing stuff for movies. It's that movies were making stuff to get played on MTV.
For us. My wife years ago was a music supervisor who blamed me for ruining her job because it became not about the director's vision, but about getting the soundtrack songs in the movie. The point I'm making is it was a soundtrack, and movies became soundtracks, and the cassette was a perfect thing for that.
That also gets to that point what we were talking about with Lori in the previous show, where I still disagree with, I understand what she was saying, but I think a lot of this fondness for the 80s really does come from that sense of monoculture. From a sense of everybody knew the same stuff. Everybody, because of MTV, and then because of everybody trying to jump on board and take advantage of what that was and the way that affected TV and movies and everything else, that the center got so big and everybody was on board for the same stuff that was going to explode into all the different directions that we saw after that.
Danielle is nodding away. Go ahead, Danielle. Weigh in.
Thank you. I agree with that, Alan. There was a culture we all gravitated towards. We all knew each other's music, even if we were in different genres, if it was new wave or rap or dance music, or there was just that common ground, and that brought us together. And I think that's why there's so much of a fondness, because it's like a buffet.
You know what's weird, Danielle? One of the things that used to bother me when I thought about what MTV was doing was flattening or homogenizing music. Suddenly, there was no more regional music. It wasn't New Orleans style. New Orleans heard what was going on MTV from bands that were from Seattle. And it was like that. And so suddenly there was this, in my mind, it was in a bad way. There's a homogenization. But what you're saying, you're right. It was sort of that universal outlet. And we all knew the same things at the same time.
And it's both of those. I mean, there's an upside and a downside to that, right? The ups, like I'm telling you, growing up in the middle of the country, it transformed completely because it would take so much time for like new stuff to get to Cincinnati. Like you might read about it somewhere. You have to go to the record store and ask for it, and then all of a sudden everybody heard, that new Depeche Mode single the same day. It was there everywhere that, the screen was on. But as you say, there is, of course, the other effect of that is, again, it blows everything up so big that at a certain point it's just going to pop. And that those kind of local regional hits, styles, whatever, becomes a lot more difficult to sustain.
Danielle, did anybody ever make a mixtape for you?
Yes.
She says proudly.
And I made some too.
What were your mixtapes and who were they for?
They were mostly friends, but then I remember also making tapes of tapes so that we can share music that way.
Just remember, home taping is killing the music industry.
I know.
That's right. Wow. Talk about a simpler time, Alan. Wow. Thank you, Danielle. Kevin, how about you, Kevin?
I graduated in 84 and living in Asheville, Cincinnati was a big city. Well, Asheville is just like still a small city, but everybody comes here now.
Yeah.
And we're same age, you and me.
Right. And my first show, the big rock band that come to Asheville in 82 was Van Halen. So that's my first show, Van Halen Diver Down Tour.
Wow.
Then Bon Jovi and Rat came. But I remember, I think I was a sophomore. It's like 82 or 83. They finally ran cable TV to the area. And a friend of mine said, man, you got to come over to my house and check out this show. He showed me MTV. And the first video I ever saw was the April Wine was on the top of the tractor trailer.
Wow. Just between you and me.
Yeah. And what's great now is that all these shows are people that I couldn't see back then are having their 40th anniversary tours now. And they're reasonably priced. It's just like, last summer, the openers over here in town was Jerry Harrison and Adrian Belew, and they had two of their original members come, and it was basically a talking head show. It was great. I mean, I knew everything they were singing.
There is a difference between the, quote, oldies shows that used to be around, even in the 70s. The oldie shows would be, 60s, soul bands or whatever.
That wasn't 40 years. 40 years
No.
from the 70s would have been bands from the 30s.
Exactly.
It was, 50s and 60s bands in the 70s were oldies tours. Now you're talking about 40 years ago, and that's not how it's framed. And that's not, as Laurel said, these are viable tours. They're there with their kids. It's not that kind of sad, like, well, I guess I'll go, it's still feels like a vital thing with a vital audience for it. And that's what really is so striking to me.
Hey, Mark, was part of that due to the fact that being a radio guy, that there literally were stations called oldie stations?
Absolutely.
And played those bands and labeled them that way.
Yes.
And they don't do that now. It's
Well,
not like
no.
you're going to hear Bon Jovi on an oldie station.
No, you hear it on
you know?
a classic rock station. It's just a moniker difference.
But it makes a difference, I think.
In terms of oldies stations, it's the same thing today with classic rock stations. Classic rock stations are doing the same thing that oldie stations did. They have to go through their playlist, and there's stuff that just doesn't hold up. It isn't always based on the age of the song, but a lot of times it has to do with the sound of the song. Evan, weigh in. What you got?
Okay, well, I graduated in 89, so so it was kind of, my whole decade of adolescence was through the 80s. My thing was I was more of the hair metal and the rock guy. So, one of my first concerts was Queen with Billy Squier, which, Roger saw that same show, that same tour. But I was into Maiden and, and Judas Priest and AC/DC and all that. So that's kind of what I grew up with. But then looking back now and seeing some of the newer artists now, you go back to the 80s and realize, well, those guys that I didn't really care for, no offense, but, at the time I didn't really care for Prince, didn't care for Michael Jackson. But all those guys I didn't care for, I realized the talent that they had. And, so now I'm going back and listening more, to the 80s and 90s. But, but that's kind of where my, wheelhouse was, where again, it started in the rock category, but it's, it's obviously expanded. And now I have all kinds of musical tastes, but that's really where it started for me. But the nostalgia is there.
But the nostalgia, I think, safely is, that's whatever age, to return to Mark's initial point, that's going to be there for somebody who was class of 79, somebody who was class of 99. That relationship is there. What I think is interesting is continuing to see this particular one extend in the way that it obviously keeps extending beyond just that window. The circle doesn't get smaller. It seems to at least hold its own, if not get bigger.
Like you were saying with my kids, I mean, my daughter is like my concert buddy. So anything that my wife, who's a big country music fan, doesn't like to go to, I bring my daughter. We're going to go see Hailstorm in August. We're seeing Alanis Morissette. We're seeing Sammy Hagar. So it's, just all these things that, I'm bringing her to, which makes her appreciate some of the older music. And I think, she likes that and will listen to it more.
Right. And in just a couple of minutes here, we're going to jump to a new friend of mine, Sebastian Bach, who was on the 80s cruise and sung, well, we'll talk about it more when he joins us in a couple of minutes to talk about his take on the 80s, being a 90s artist and all. But before we get to Sebastian, Wes in Tampa.
I was 11 when you took your job at MTV. So, I came of age during your years at MTV,
Right.
Like I said in the chat, I think the big thing was the sound. The sound became so much bigger. Keyboards, synthesizers were coming of age. But another thing that was coming of age was the way to record back then. You didn't need 2-inch tapes anymore by the end of the 80s. You could literally record 16
Are you showing
tracks
me a
onto
floppy
mini
disc?
This is actually a recording of
mini
mine
disc.
from 1992. That I'm going to get.
Dude, you had a mini disc?
That's a 4-track mini disc from like 1992. But this format of recording came out in the 80s. If the Beatles had the mini discs, they'd still be recording Rubber Soul, because they wouldn't have to commit to anything, But to me, obviously the 80s for me. And the synthesizers, as a recording and studio engineer, I kind of categorized that whole 80s synthesizer into the first half of the 80s and the back half. So the early 80s, Gary Newman, Randy Newman doing Sunset Grill, and that kind of thing. And then the late 80s, the synthesizers were a lot better by the end of the 80s.
Why do you think that made the audience transform? What was the impact of having that?
I guess you were kind of talking about the audio side. You just can't discount the video side of music, and that it's hard to put the video aspect of music in the 80s aside. It really is. I think Mark would agree, but I think it's the expansion of computers. It's expansion of music got bigger. What was Thriller, like 100 and Michael Jackson recorded on like 100 plus tracks. You could have these big, huge orchestras of recordings by the 80s. You couldn't do that so much in the 70s, and before.
I think aside from the actual nature and ability to record was the advance in technology to listen. And those are the kinds of advances that have changed music, I think, over the years. Now what we have is the world at our fingertips, and that's a bad thing, I think, because now nobody knows what anybody's listening to. And the number one record in the country, half the country hasn't heard. To wrap this up, we're going to bring in our friend Sebastian Bach. And I learned a little something on this cruise. And what happened on the last night of the cruise is something I never imagined. Air Supply was one of the headliners on the cruise. Admittedly, not one of my favorite bands, but still, I get the craft. Come to find out, on the last night, who gets up for the last song with Air Supply? Sebastian Bach. Let's bring Sebastian in right now. Sebastian, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
I saw this dude get up on stage, not with Stephen Pearcy from Rat. No, on stage with Air Supply.
Metal.
What the hell, Sebastian Bach?
Come on, well, hey, Mark, you know what Charles Mingus said, right?
What did he say?
What's the famous quote? Alan Light, come on.
Only two kinds of music, good music and bad music. You got it.
Apparently we disagree on good and bad.
Well,
okay, well, that's heavy.
So get us to that moment.
Why did you wind up on stage with Air Supply? Are you a fan? Did you speak to them in advance? You must have.
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
Well, let me get you up to that point. When I was 9 years old, I had a paper route. Okay, that was 1977 or maybe 78. And I used to get up at before the sun came up and get on my bike. My dad made me do this, and I'm glad he did. I wasn't so glad at the time. And I'd get on my bike and I would pick up the Globe and Mail paper in Toronto, and I would deliver it to the neighborhood households. And to get me through this, I purchased a transistor radio, battery operated, and some double-sided tape. And I taped it to my handlebars and would listen to CKPT radio while I was delivering the papers. And the biggest song was Lost in Love by Air Supply. And I was hopelessly lost in love with that song. and I actually love that song. I do. I was in the church choir, and Russell Hitchcock is an impeccable vocalist. I would classify them as yacht rock with luxurious chest hair and recorded in expensive studios. And so I love melody, and I love AM hits, man. I love AM hit radio. I always have since I was a little kid. I love AM hit radio songs. I always have loved that.
So how'd you put together this performance?
Well, my wife did it really because she loves Air Supply. And to be honest with you, I was exhausted on the last day of the ship. I don't know about you guys, but when that ship cruise was 8 days long.
With 4 days at sea.
Right. And most cruises that I've done are 4 days total, or 5 at the most. So this was the longest cruise I've ever been on. And what happens for me, as the days go on, the motion of the ocean, that lulling thing, every time I'd sit down in a chair, I'd be like nodding out because I don't know why. But so right before I got on stage in my chair, I was asleep in the audience. And I was mad. I was mad at my wife. I was like, how come I don't get a day off? What the fuck? Why can't I watch the show without fucking warming up my voice, and everybody's filming it, and it's so fucking gonna be on Blabbermouth and all that, and she's like, oh, you are just you're so hard. Like, I always whine and moan, and then I get up there and do it, and I love it. And then I'm incredibly thankful to everybody for making me do it, because at that point, I just wanted to do nothing. Like, to be honest with you, I was exhausted, but I am very glad I did it. And Russell Hitchcock has been texting me. Evidently, that video has over 1 million views in like 4 days. So who knew?
All righty then. Surprising, but it was a really amazing moment. And you kind of brought two audiences together, if you know what I'm saying, you know? It was a beautiful, beautiful moment. And I gotta say, sounded pretty good.
Even you have to say that.
Yeah, if somebody was like, yeah, let's have Sebastian Bach do backing vocals with Air Supply.
Maybe not.
But damn, you crushed it. I was amazed, as was everyone, at how much fun, how great it was. And is there any other weird bands from your childhood that we should know about?
You just made my day, Mark. You really did, because I've respected you since I was a little kid. You brought me these mother truckers way up in Canada. We would trade VHS tapes, bootleg. And you were on them. Like, we're like, look, who's this guy? I got to get out there. Like, so that means a lot to me. And I will say this, Alan, you know my Skid Row catalog. I'm sure you guys do as well, Roger. But the song I Remember You is in the key of a high tenor, Journey, Air Supply. It's in that range. So I learned how to sing high by songs like Lost in Love and I'm All Out of Love, and every song that has love in the title. Air Supply, I think every song I have is about
there
love.
is no songs without love in the title with Air Supply.
I think they have a song called Without Love.
I got to ask you, Sebastian, because I've wondered this about everyone who winds up playing on one of our cruises. And I think that you had to deal with one of those rocky nights on stage.
Yes, I did.
What is that like for you? You were actually pretty funny about it. But what is that like for you to be on stage? Yeah, and rocking back and forth. People, it's hard enough to be on stage and yet on a boat rocking back and forth.
Here's my quote about cruise ships. I did not think this up. I saw this on the David Letterman show, an interview with Tom Waits, one of my favorite performers. He gets drunk and just kills it. Love that about him. But one of my favorite records is Heart of Saturday Night by Tom Waits. Love that album. So I'm watching his interview, and he sits down, and Dave Letterman goes, "So what have you been doing, Tom?" And he goes, "Well, I just got off a cruise ship." And everybody laughs, and David Letterman goes, "So what are your thoughts on being on a cruise ship?" And Tom goes, "Well, for me, it's kind of like being in jail with a chance of drowning." I cannot top that quote. I can't top it because I can't walk around on the cruise. It's, hey, can I just get one picture? Can I just get one? Same for you, Mark. So
yeah,
you can't really walk. So it's like being in jail with a chance of drowning. Thank you, Tom.
Sebastian, tell me, we're talking to our audience about what is the sort of continuing appeal of the 80s. And that music and that culture. You're coming off the boat. First of all, you get a call for an 80s cruise. Do you think, okay, I'll take the check? Or do you think, oh, I'm psyched to do that one? And what is it 40 years later that this is, that they still put that up, sell that boat out right away? What is it when you think of the 80s that keeps people coming back?
Well, I have to preface this answer by saying for years, I took it as an insult, like to the point where the word 80s would make me aggravated because 80s, I just got tired of it. Like my album came out in 89, okay? That was 1 year. But I mean, one album in 91, I'll have you know, okay? It's just like I got sick and tired of it. So I took it as an insult for a long time. And I've got to say, two things changed my mind. This cruise, more than anything, changed my mind because the people that were on there, like I was in the 80s, like that was just a time. That's a number. And I realized on this cruise that the 80s was the most fun decade. Like everybody on this cruise was out to have fun and laugh and be with their friends and listen to the music they love. And I just got over it. And let me say this. I'm a huge Neil Young fan to the point where I collect all his records. I read his interviews. I watch I respect him and how FU he is to everything. And I was reading one of Neil Young's interviews and he goes, "Well, man, I always get tagged as this 70s songwriter. And I'm sick of always reading." And I'm reading this going, wait a minute. The 70s were cool and you are a songwriter. And I go, "Hey, Sebastian, why don't you get over this?" If you're thinking, Neil's like, "I always get tagged in this 70s song." So I was like, "Neil, get over it." And then I said, well, I put that article and I go, maybe you should get over it, Mr. 80s. So
wow, how incredibly self-aware of you, Sebastian.
I just read that and I felt like guilty. I go, well, you can't take 80s as an insult. And another thing, in the cabins was 2 channels playing MTV videos out of sync, which was weird.
Radically out of sync. Yes.
I lost on Jeopardy. But me and my wife had those channels going the whole time, and we both miss MTV, and I'll tell you why. That was when all of our lives were filled with music. Like you'd wake up, you'd put it on. It would play all day. You're cleaning house. You go to the mall. It's on in all the stores.
Yeah.
You go get your hair done. It's on every single TV. You get on the plane, it's on the back of the chair. It's our lives were filled with music, like everywhere you turned. When I see on the internet, Drake has beaten the Beatles for the most number ones ever, I go, how come I can't name one Drake song at all? None. But he's bigger than the Beatles, really. Because when MTV had a hit video, the whole nation was singing this one song. Like, that's the way it was. We were unified under music, and my wife's going, how do we like get this back? She's like, where can our kids put a channel on and watch music? And it's, I don't know, YouTube, I guess, but
yeah.
I really feel like we lost something when we took music out of our everyday lives. And that's what MTV was to me. It was like a constant, and we just missed the music for real.
Well, I have to agree. I think despite what was actually going on in the 80s, let's keep politics out of this, but there was some crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
And there was, if you think about it, there's 3 or 4 songs in the 80s that were about nuclear holocaust.
Right.
And there's a reason for that.
3 or 4 number ones that were about
exactly.
Yeah.
So there was that, and so maybe that was it, that we were living under in the shadow of that, and was like, well, fuck it, let's party.
Like it's 1999, you might say.
But like my kid, I have a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old, and a couple Christmases ago, I got them both vinyl record players. And my wife's like, they're not going to like that. They're not going to, what are you, crazy? Like, I go, just watch. Just watch this. And I'll give my son $20 at a used record store, and he'll get either one really good one or 3 or 4 scratched up ones. And he runs home every day, puts the vinyl on, and runs around his room, jumping off the bed, playing air guitar. And I laugh. My wife's like, I'm like, oh, do they like the record player? Or like, some things don't need to be updated. Some things are good the way they are. And like, I have a video that's got over 1 million views. What do I got to lose? Beyonce has a new video, Texas Hold'em, that is crushing it. So why can't there be somewhere where a 10-year-old can put it on and see Beyonce into Sebastian, into Air Supply, into Stephen Pearcy? I think that's a hole in the market, because if you're getting that many views, make a channel out of that. Whatever, I've said my piece.
Kids aren't watching channels for anything. They're watching videos, and they're watching 1 million. They're still seeing it, and they may be seeing it in bigger numbers than what they were seeing when there was one channel that would do it. So, that's the other side of it.
When MTV, like Dial MTV, that was the whole country watching that stuff. That was 4 p.m. Start voting for your favorite video, and everybody tunes in at 6. And it was exciting, man. Like
that was the technology back then was, wow, they just invented speed dial. And that's why Motley Crue was number 1 for like 3 months.
Right. Home Sweet Home.
Home Sweet Home.
Yeah. The first power ballad, I think.
So, Sebastian, what is up? I was looking online. New music coming from you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I have a new album produced by Elvis Basquette, who did Wolfgang Van Halen's albums and Alter Bridge, Miles Kennedy, Tremonti, and unbelievably, you old guys will know about this. My new album was mastered by Robert Ludwig, okay? Who mastered Led Zeppelin 2, Steely Dan, Kiss Alive. Like, okay, I'm friends with Adam Jones from Tool, only because we live next to each other in studio. It's not like he's a big fan or anything, but we were neighbors, and we became really good buddies, playing with the kids and having a bouncy house in the backyard and stuff, and we became really good friends. And he's like, here's my new album, the new Tool record, Inoculum. And I turn around the back and it says, mastered by Robert Ludwig. I go, wait a minute. I go, that's not the same guy that did Led's Whole Lot of Love. He goes, yes, it is. I go, how old is this guy? What kind of a career is that? And he's like 82. He still masters records. He did the Metallica Black reissue, Alice in Chains Dirt reissue, and I told my record company, you want to make me happy, because I collect vinyl, and every record I have that says Robert Ludwig on the back is the top sound, like it is.
Right.
The Nightfly, Donald Fagen, like unbelievable. So the record guy goes, okay. And Robert Ludwig ends up mastering the record. I got him on the phone, and he's like, Sebastian, send me what you're working on. And I'm all excited, and I'm like, well, Donald, I'm like, one of my favorite records is Donald Fagen, The Nightfly. Do you think he can make my record sound like that? He goes, no. He goes, no. Because your record is not Donald Fagen, The Nightfly. And we were both laughing on the phone. I go, well, I didn't mean like sound exactly like that. I mean, so, and you know what? You guys will appreciate this. It was part of my plan to go up to Gateway Mastering, which is in Portland, and interview. I wanted to interview Robert about Led Zeppelin 2. You know the story. He had too much bass. So Ahmet had to go remaster it. So those early pressings with the bass are totally valuable, right? But his wife said, no, he doesn't want to do any interviews or anything. He does want to master your record. And I go, okay, let the man do his thing. Work. And so since then, Robert Ludwig has retired and does not master albums anymore. One of the last records he ever did.
Really? You retired the guy?
You put him right over the edge.
You put him out.
And then David Hasselhoff. That was it. Once they stepped in my shoes, it was over. Right. But as a vinyl collector, I am a fan of my own record. Thank you very much.
Sebastian Bach. Great to have you on. It was a blast seeing you sing with Air Supply. I'm waiting for the guest spot, on an upcoming tune. They need to join you on your album.
Oh, wow. Well, actually, Russell and Graham have been texting me, and they are talking about doing a 50th tribute album anniversary. And
they're going to cover 18 in Life?
Like a metal version of Lost in Love. What do you think of that? Lost in love and I don't know much. I got to stand up for the next one.
Sebastian, we're going to wrap it up here. You're awesome on the boat. You're awesome here. I'm glad that we got a chance to actually chat with you a bit. I am a new fan of Sebastian Bach now, I got to say. Many thanks for showing up here on our podcast. That is our show. Alan?
Go to sounduppod.com to find out how you can be a part of our live Sound Up, Sound Off podcast taping and become part of the Sound Up Pod Squad, along with Peggy Lipton and Link and all of them. Email us at connect@sounduppod.com. Send us your text, email, send us your voice messages. And remember, you can hear our new music picks and the music we discuss on the show over on our Sound Up Pod soundtrack playlist that we're putting together on Spotify. Go hear all the music that we're talking about on the show.
Definitely do that. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you wind up listening to Sound Up on. A few weeks ago, I'll say this, we discussed the topic of solo artists, not bands. We talked about that idea of solo artists ruling the pop charts. Closing us out this week with his comments is Sound Up Pod Squad member Irish Keith.
Jesus, lads, it's been a long second time, hasn't it? Anyway, boys, listen, I was listening to your show there a couple of weeks ago, or last week, or the other day, whatever the fuck it was, time flies by. And there was this dude talking about bands are a thing of the past. It's like, what the bloody hell? That's mad. That's fucking mental. Bands being a thing of the past. That has to be an American thing. There's no way it's like that in England. Because England have so many fucking great bands, new bands anyway. I went and had a look at the fucking top 10 of the bands in England at the moment. Well, not the top 10. I was seeing what kind of singers were number one in England over the past year. And Jesus Christ, it's Miley Cyrus, Dave. Who the fuck is Dave and what's his surname? Ray with an E at the end, Taylor fucking Swift, Ellie Bleeding Golding, and Jungle Book of BTS. See, even one dude of BTS has his own fucking single. Anyway, I don't like any solo artists. I can't think of a single solo artist I like right now. Maybe Michael Jackson, but he's long fucking dead. I mean, there's a bunch of great bands. What was his name? Tom from Wisconsin was on there as well, just the last show or a couple of shows ago. I fucking miss New Music Friday so fucking bad, man. It was my favourite day of the week. But there's loads of great bands coming out, like Chalk from Belfast. They're an Irish band who are coming out right now. They just released their second EP called Conditions 2. Some great kind of punk electronic kind of music. And then my favourite album of the year so far, a Dublin band called Sprints, lead singer Carl Chubb, fucking rocks the house down. One of the best albums, if the best album so far this year, maybe. And then of course Idols. Idols had another brilliant album this year called Tank, but they spelled it with a fucking G. What are you doing putting a G in between the N and the K, man? I'm going to spend half an hour trying to think how to pronounce this thing. Tank. Anyway, I could go on and on, but listen, lads, fucking fantastic to have you boys back again. I can't believe the bleeding podcast is going on. I can't believe you three boys are a team again. It's fucking fantastic. The Volumaniacs are still alive, still well. Anyway, there you go. I'm going to get the fuck out of here. Right, bye.
And that's what we say to you as well. We thank you for joining us on this one. And Irish Keith, we love you from the heart. We love you and thank you for that message. And thanks to every single person who is here with us as part of our virtual audience. Even if you decided to not come on and talk with us, we appreciate you being here. We know you're there and we love you for it. All right, that's going to wrap it up. But we are going to be back with a brand new episode dropping on Tuesday. We will catch you then on Sound Up.
Sound Up is hosted by Mark Goodman and Alan Light, produced by Roger Coletti, and distributed by Revolver Podcasts. Theme music by Smile from Tokyo. Get Sound Up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information, email us at connect@sounduppod.com. We'll see you next time right here on Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light.